Pleased to have Dr. John Gardner with us and distinguished panel members. Let me see if I can provide some context here off the top of my head. I don't think we need much context, but it's a very, very interesting, exciting time to be a community college leader. Challenging time to be sure. The fiscal situation, as we heard this morning, not that we don't know it and haven't heard it before, but whether you're talking California, Illinois, Florida, New York, Wisconsin in the news, New Jersey, the fiscal challenges are great. And nevertheless, though, there really has been a convergence of forces, if you think about it, all focusing on community colleges. And in most of our lifetimes, I think it's fair to say we haven't seen that convergence heretofore. From the White House to the state houses, governors, legislators, to local leaders, everybody seems to be talking about community colleges in a very positive way, how important these community colleges, our community colleges, are for our citizens, for our businesses and their employees who need workforce training. So there really is a convergence, and I think one of the points made this morning, we'll talk a little bit more about it after dinner. I know Ron wants to do that. It's a moment that may not come our way again, this convergence, and I think all of us are of a mind that we really ought to seize the moment, try to leverage it, if you will, in positive ways that will help our colleges. And to that end, I think you may recall this, let me refresh all of our memories, our 19 community college presidents, I guess a week and a half ago, 3 presidents on the behalf of the 19, presented a call to action in the legislature at the Assembly Higher Education Committee, a call to action all around the theme that we're going to hear from Dr. Gardner about tonight, student success. Community colleges, as you know, since their founding 40 years ago, the foundational principle, if you had to pick one word, what would it be? Access. Access, access, access. And it's been a great success story. You've heard me and others say 400,000 strong now here in New Jersey. I mean, think about that. But the message kicked off, so to speak, at the White House a couple of months ago. And Sid, you were there, I believe, for the White House summit that started us down this path. But truly in a bipartisan way in our state house, access, wonderful, but it has to be access to success. There are lots of ways for our colleges to get engaged, our presidents, our staffs, our trustees, in the student success conversation. We've talked a bit about the Achieving the Dream framework. We're going to hear about another framework tonight that at least 2 of our colleges, Mercer and Ocean County College, are finding much to their liking. So we're going to start off hearing about what that framework is from Dr. Gardner. And I think we'll wait for Pat Donohue. We're going to be joined on the panel by 2 presidents and 2 trustees. And when this John is finished, Dr. Gardner will turn to Dr. John Larson and Dr. Pat Donohue to introduce the panel members and trustees from their colleges. Does that sound like a game plan? Thanks for being here, Dr. Gardner.
Well, thank you very much, Larry. And you all understand this microphone is for recording, not for amplification. I'm here for 2 reasons tonight. One relatively recent, the other more than 4 decades old, and the latter has to do with all of you, which is to say that I wouldn't be here tonight if it weren't for America's community colleges. And I want to elaborate on that, but first I want to say the more immediate reason I'm here. How many of you have ever been taken out for a drink by John Larson here? Any of you? No, well, yeah, actually, you know, in a literal sense, he paid for it, but I really paid for it because I'd been working all day on his campus, and I mean, who else would hold a major convocation on the presidential inauguration day? I mean, you know, we will not interfere with the educational business at hand, so he was not in Washington that day. He was minding the store. At the end of this day, he took me out for dinner and a drink, and I don't know, it may have been 2 drinks, but anyway, my resistance had sufficiently weakened, and I agreed at his request to come and address his peers. Now, I want you all to note for the record that he acknowledges that he has peers, okay? And he thought that it would be perhaps helpful to you, and so I agreed to that. All right, that's the more immediate reason I'm here. Now, the longer-term reason here is that I have had a very rewarding, exciting, and really fun career. Not over yet, but I've had it because of your sector of higher education. I'd like to explain that. I was never a student in a community college. I grew up on the Gold Coast of Connecticut. I'm from New Canaan, Connecticut, Fairfield County, and I am an example of what sociologists call downward social mobility, okay? I was born a child of privilege, and I decided for a number of reasons not to pursue a life of privilege. And I did go to college, went to graduate school, and I was drafted in graduate school. Some of you remember the Vietnam conflict, what we hoped would be our last. And so when I was drafted, I volunteered for the Air Force, which in its infinite wisdom made me a psychiatric social worker and sent me to a place I did not want to go 2 years after the Civil Rights Act, namely South Carolina. And I had just arrived there, my first permanent duty station after my training. And 2 days after I'd arrived on my permanent base, my squadron commander, who was the first person of color other than my own that I'd ever had to say yes, sir, to, called me in and told me he'd been reviewing my record and found that I was surprisingly well educated. And that meant to him that he wanted me to perform service. Now, I was 23 years old, and nobody had ever said to me before, Gardner, we expect you to perform service. You know, are we letting our students get to be 23 or 33 before we tell them they have an obligation to perform service? I hope not. Anyway, 2 weeks later, I started teaching at a community college as a result of the direct order from my squadron commander. I had never dreamed of being a teacher, never even thought about it. But after I got over my initial anxiety, I found that this was more fun than anything a 23-year-old able-bodied, single, healthy male had ever done in his life. Use your imagination. I mean, they were paying me a modest stipend to do the 4 things I love to do the most: talk, read, write, and help people. And I didn't know you could have an occupation doing that. And so I decided to stay in higher education. And some years later, I ran that campus, that 2-year public open admissions campus, and 5 others in the state of South Carolina. I did some other things while I was in South Carolina, but your sector gave me my career, and I'm very much indebted, and I will spend the rest of my professional life trying to repay that. Now, let's see, in 1961, I took Speech 101. How many of you have taken Speech 101? I see some other survivors. Can any of you tell me anything that you remember from that course? Pardon me? The speech book? Yeah, okay. It shouldn't ideally be a textbook course, but maybe it was. Well, that was one of my best grades. My first year of college, my grade was a D. And my first transcript that went home to my parents 13 years before the Buckley Amendment to the Privacy Act were 3 Fs, 2 Ds, and 1 A. So that was actually one of my better subjects. And one of the things I remember from that course is if you have anything in common with an audience, you need to let them know. So I want to establish with you what I'm calling my New Jersey bona fides, okay? My parents were both from East Orange. They both graduated from East Orange High School, and my father was the captain of the football team there and the baseball team, and he held for decades the New Jersey record in the 440. He wanted me to be an athlete. I did row varsity crew when I was in college, but not to his level of prowess. Now, I spent every summer as a child on Barnegat Bay, in what was called in that part of the state a cottage. It had 7 bedrooms, and it was built in the 1880s, a Victorian-era cottage. It's still there. It's about 10 miles from Ocean County College, and I hadn't been by to see it for years, but when I visited Ocean County a couple of years ago, I did go by and see it. Probably the most influential thing, though, that ever happened to me in New Jersey was 3 summers during college at the direction of my father. I had a character-building experience, and that was serving as a steelworker. I was a member of the Steelworkers Union, working for the American Can Company in Hillside, New Jersey, making beer cans. Now, as I note here on the slide, this was torture for a young college man, not a drop to drink. And the average temperature in the plant in the summer was over 90 degrees, produced heat in the manufacturing process. This was before OSHA, no hearing protection. I would leave in the afternoon. I couldn't hear the car start or a horn blow. It was memorable. But especially I remember the people. And I didn't know what I wanted to do in life, but I knew what I didn't want to do. My father, you know, the older I get, the smarter he gets. And it was a very good thing he did, arranging this employment for me those 3 summers. Unfortunately, the plant is gone. The company is gone. The world is changed. The United Steelworkers of America, though, are not gone. But they're different. Now, I see that I omitted a slide, or not a slide, an institutional logo. I want you to know in terms of my bona fides that I have visited a number of campuses in New Jersey. Actually, 3 community colleges. The first one I visited was Mercer County. I don't know why that's not on the slide. I was there in 1987 and lived to tell about it. Much more recently, in 2008, Union County College, and then more recently still on Inauguration Day 2009, Ocean County. Now, Ocean County and Mercer currently I am working with in a project that I will tell you about. And then I've been to these 4-year institutions, and I may have forgotten somebody there. I will comment also that I got an honorary degree from Rowan, and the reason I got that was because have any of you ever had a commencement speaker cancel on you at the last minute? Anybody ever have that happen? None of you. So, all right, but all you presidents, you have a commencement speech written and in your pocket that you can deliver should the commencement speaker not show up. Well, anyway, very shortly before Rowan University's commencement, about 6 years ago, they discovered that the chief financial officer had promised the president of the university, and they'd gone public with this announcement, that the CFO was delivering none other than Colin Powell as the speaker. Well, Mr. Powell, General Powell, got distracted and notified them very near to commencement that he wasn't going to come. So at a cabinet meeting, they got together and they said, who could we ask at the last minute and not insult? And it was decided by one of the vice presidents to ask me. And so I happened to be free and went, and they, for bailing them out on this last-minute occasion, they gave me an honorary degree. So I'm proud of my affiliations with New Jersey higher education. Doesn't make me an expert, but it means I've been around the block in your sector and you know, feel like I know a fair amount about you. Now, more recently, I have been engaged in what for my career is a signature work. It's called Foundations of Excellence in the first college year. It's a strategic planning process that's offered by a nonprofit organization which I have the privilege to run. I run a 501c3, just like you ladies and gentlemen do. We're based in Brevard, North Carolina, and our institute is an Institute for Excellence in Undergraduate Education. It's immodestly named for me. And we've had the privilege of working with these 5 institutions in New Jersey in this planning process. The goal of this is to produce a plan to improve the success of what you do with your new students. And then it's up to you to implement the plan. This is a unique process. There's none other like it in the country, and we've been very privileged to work with these institutions. Kane, we're just finishing with now, and they are integrating this process into their Middle States reaccreditation process. I have in the packets that you were kindly distributed by the association staff, there is a list of the Middle States institutions that we've had engaged in this process. Mercer County is undergoing this process now. They will have finished by the end of this spring this action plan, which is going to improve the success of their new students. Ocean County College has completed the plan, and now all they have to do is to implement the plan. And when they do, our externally conducted research has found that institutions in the aggregate that do this planning process and then actually implement it, and those are 2 big things. You got to have a plan, and you've got to implement it. So, you know, we academics, we love to plan, but implementation is another whole challenge. But if you do a plan and you implement it, we're finding that our institutions are realizing in the aggregate an 8.2% increase in first to second year retention. which is no small potatoes, any way you want to measure it. So I regard myself as no stranger to New Jersey higher education.